the answer to my prayers. Without thinking, I sprang out of bed and grabbed my jacket and sneakers, slipping out of the house just as easily as the first time. Mostly fueled by hunger, I ran to meet the truck halfway. It rolled to a stop, clearly spotting me. Not that I was hard to miss, of course. I ran next to its minty green body and impatiently waited. But nothing happened. "Hey, kiddo," the voice said through the open passenger window. "Sorry about that. My hatch is stuck and won't open. What can I get for you?" Another bomb pop, please," I asked pitifully. Hiding the pleading whine in my voice was impossible. "Not a problem. Let's have a look-see." I could hear him rummaging around, muttering incoherently to himself. He returned, sounding less than cheerful. "Well, that isn't good." My heart sank like an anchor. "What isn't?" "Well, it looks like I'm all out of those for the night. Dang, what bad luck." A painful throb racked my stomach, making me wince. Something else?" I begged. "Can I have something else?" He rummaged around some more and sighed heavily. "I'm sorry to say, but it looks like I have nothing left." Tears rushed to my eyes. Hopelessness bubbled up inside me. My solution, the one sure thing I needed to get rid of these cravings, was gone. I'd have to wait until tomorrow night. I started the miserable walk home, back to the bed I knew I wouldn't be able to fall asleep in. My sneakers dragged along the asphalt. "Hang on a tad," the voice said. "Looks like I have one more left, just for you." I whipped back around and raced to the passenger window. "Really?" I said, wiping the trailing tears from my face.
"Of course."
I heard something unlock. The passenger door. "I found it right up here. Come and get it." A chorus of alarmed voices called out to my brain. "Not safe. This is a stranger. Go home. Not safe." Of course, there were red flags, obvious ones, but I was not thinking clearly. My logic had whittled away. All that mattered was the craving, the unusual desire for that exquisite taste. It possessed me. I knew there were risks, but my fatigued boyish mind was done compromising. I pulled the green metal door open. The cabin was expectantly as dark as its backside. An invisible coldness permeated the air, about as cold as you'd presume an ice cream truck to be. The tart, dancing smells of chocolate, strawberry, bubblegum, and other flavors graced my nose. A single grated step led inside. I spied a vague silhouette sitting at the driver's seat with my bomb pop in hand. From atop his dashboard, the bobblehead of a gray cat jiggled its head. "Go on, it's all yours," he said pleasantly. I leaned inside the truck, planting one foot over the metallic step while the other remained on the pavement. The dim outline of the driver held out the popsicle, just inches from my fingers. "Come on," he said again. "Don't you want it?" Just as my fingertips grazed the foil casting, I heard something that without a doubt saved my life that night. A strained voice squeaked out of the truck's insides. "Help me." The hand holding the popsicle lunged at me, seizing my arm as I tried to pull back, grabbing a handful of sleeve instead of skin. I gasped, too shocked to muster a scream, and jerked backwards, but his grip was relentless. The darkness around us dispersed, and in an instant, I could see everything, like some veil had lifted. A nauseating texture coated the ceiling, rust perhaps. It crawled down the inner walls in a reddish-brown crust. There were scuff marks on the strained floor, a foul, eggy smell that thickened the air. Every window was impossible to see through, smeared with grime and networking cracks. But the worst of all, the crux of my persistent nightmares even now, was the thing in the driver's seat. A naked, bluish body mottled with dark rashes and boils. Folds of excess skin sagged off of its bloated frame, almost like it was melting. One of its long, double-jointed arms was pulling at my sleeve. The loose flesh that hung off of it wobbled and jiggled like sacks of trapped liquid. And then its face, the horrible, horrible face, was creased with a clownish smile. Its gums were gray and infected with bent teeth jutting out of them. It looked bald at first glance, but a few straggly white hairs sprouted from its swollen blue scalp. One of its eyes, a pitch black sphere, was rotted in its cheek, like it had slid down from the socket. The only thing remotely human about the thing was the way it sat in the driver's seat, one ugly hand on the steering wheel, the other still trying to pull me closer. A guttural voice spat out of its mouth at a sickeningly cheery octave. "Don't you want it, little guy?" I screamed and didn't stop screaming. The sanity drained out of me in fat, seeping tears. My vision was a wet, blurry haze of horror, and internal voices screamed for me to run, run, run. Suddenly, something was ripping. I flung myself back onto the asphalt. My sleeve was now a bloodless gash of torn fabric. The nude humanoid thing was exerting a strange huffing, gurgling sound. Maybe laughter? I don't care to know for sure. The outside of the truck was even worse than the inside. Eating away at the pale green paint was a thick film of black matter. It covered the car in a black, muddy ooze, smothering the cartoonish boy in his broad smile. A few letters did show through, though. Join the fun. Parts of the grimy substance were moving, throbbing maybe, as though they had some sort of pulse. The speakers atop its mucky body, although caked in the stuff, were still spewing out sound. It wasn't music, not in any way the human mind could understand. A hollow, high-pitched frequency with a gravelly white noise hiss. Behind the corrupted pitch was something else, something that almost sounded like it was trying to escape from it. A choppy, inaudible screaming. Hell. I was hearing hell. With the last burst of adrenaline my system had to offer, I twisted around and tore through the yard to reach my house. I flung the door open, slammed it shut, and slid down to the floor. I buried my head in the crevice of my knees, drenched in snot and tears. I sat there wallowing for some time, waiting for my father's footsteps to come pounding out of his room, but it never happened. Both my parents were still in bed. I tried to wake my mother up, and out of pure desperation, my father too, but neither so much as stirred. The gritty white noise was still screaming from the street. I hid beneath my sheets and covered my ears, trying everything I could to expel it from my head. "Help me," the distressed voice had said from the back of the truck. The voice that saved my life. Finally, after minutes of grueling torture, the truck revved its engine and cruised down the street. The house became silent, save for my sleepless crying. A child did go missing that night. Matthew, the boy with freckled cheeks and square lenses. I will not be giving out his name for respect of the family. His parents had woken up to his empty room and their front door left ajar. They called the police and filed a missing persons report, and the community was notified about the disappearance. I remember seeing a few police cruisers lined outside Mr. Mason's house, probably because the boy's mother heard him spout off about an ice cream truck coming in the dead of night. They found no evidence against him, but the gray ice cream van didn't leave his garage for the rest of summer, or any summer after that. To this day, I can still feel those bitter flavors in my mouth, sitting on my tongue like a pool of chemicals. At first, it only affected sweet things, then salty things, and slowly worked its way up to everything. No matter what I eat, no matter what I drink, my stomach attempts to force it out of my body due to its acrid waxiness. I take no pleasure in food. I eat only not to die. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed something as simple as taste. Every night, a new wave of impulses come back, prying at the last cardboard walls of my sanity. I cram my knuckles into my teeth to trap the screams inside. I beg the dark nothingness of my room for something sweet. That's how it draws you out. Hunger. When the happy, inviting music gets in your head, it fills you with cravings masquerading as hunger. Don't bother trying to wake your parents. It won't work. Not while that truck is in your neighborhood. Then you take the bait, the incredible flavor from your dreams, a taste so perfect you'd kill for a sliver of it again. But when you go back, begging for just one more, it takes you. So, I implore you, whether or not you decide to believe me after hearing this, at least give it some thought. If you are ever stirred awake in the dead of night and an ice cream truck's jingle drifts in from the window, go back to sleep. For the love of God, go back to sleep. I was 8 years old and in the hospital. My mother was caressing my shoulder, familiar worry etched into her face. The white room we were in smelled like flowers dipped in rubbing alcohol. Next to her was the doctor, hunched toward me and taking his sweet time suturing the final stitches in my fingertip, the one I foolishly sliced open with a can lid. It hurt. Even with the shots they gave me, it still hurt. But behind the mild tugs and the sharp jolts of pain, my mind took notice of something moving in the room. A small, grainy shape floating by the doctor's head. An orb, like a snow globe. Aimlessly, it wafted around the room, a helpless bubble caught in an unseen current. The inside of it fluttered with swarming specks of light that made me think of fireflies. All at once, the specks condensed in the orb's center, throbbing brightly with a pulse of light, and then continuing to swarm in their different directions. They did this at a steady pace, just like the pulse in my finger. "Mom?" I finally asked. "Do you see the fairy?" Both she and the doctor exchanged puzzled looks. That was the first time I saw them. The second time was at my friend's house back in 7th grade. It was a school night, and we'd spent the evening shifting between scary movies and reaction videos. What had started for me as a slight ache in my temple soon escalated into a pounding migraine. My head was absolutely killing me. I dreaded the walk back home, and my friend's dad let me sleep on his couch until the painkillers sedated me. In the quiet darkness of his stairway, I caught another orb in my peripheral vision. Its hazy, light-filled body drifted by the stairs. The same clustered specks, the same whisking, clueless movements. But one thing was different. This time, I could smell the strong, musty smell of an ashtray. When the painkillers kicked in, both the orb and the smell were gone. It wouldn't be until later that same month that I found out my friend had lost his mother to lung cancer, caused by her favorite cigarettes. There is an eerie comfort in realizing you aren't crazy, that the things you'd noticed all your life weren't just figments being upchucked out of the imagination. Pain, that's the trigger point. It's the only way I can see the spirits, or entities, or whatever you'd like to call them. I've always considered that a blessing. Without my endorphins working as an off switch, I'd see them everywhere, coasting all over the place, bumping into each other like jellyfish corpses. I've tried touching them, even going as far as to try to catch one in a jar. No dice. They're all incorporeal. Not all of them have their own distinct smells. Don't ask me what factors into that either. Sometimes, if I'm close enough to one, I can make out something reflected off its transparent surface. A faint glimpse of lips, hair, maybe an eye staring back at me. I don't consider myself a medium or anything highbrowed like that, nor do I talk to anyone about these sorts of things. Attention isn't something I seek. To be honest, I'm just someone used to being out of the ordinary. I was born with cat eye syndrome in my left pupil, an abnormality that elongates its shape. Contrary to the name, my pupil looks more like a glob of ink sliding down my iris than the eye of my gray cat. Because it can't dilate on its own, I'm also extra sensitive to bright things. For the most part, I've gotten used to the double takes from people, the look one more time then snap away approach. School thickened that tolerance. Kids called me Cyclops and liked to spread rumors that I was infected with some horrific disease. I'm not sure if that's the reason I can see the things I do, but one thing is certain. My left eye can spot them a lot more clearly in the dark. One Thursday evening, in the faint point of summer, my uncle contacted my father and asked if I'd like to visit him for a few days. My uncle was looking for some last-minute assistance renovating a new home he was getting ready to move into and offered me a chance to make some extra money. Considering that he'd cover the flight to Mississippi, I took him up on it. Being a fresh graduate out of high school, I was scrounging up whatever funds I could find for college. The trip from Los Angeles to Delta, Mississippi was over 3 hours, and Uncle Davin was already there at the pickup spot. I wasn't just there for the job. Getting to see him was worth the flight all on its own. You'd never meet a brighter spirit than his, always smiling and lending a helping hand, despite his own personal troubles. When he wasn't preaching at his local church, he was giving back to the community, somewhere, some way. "Catch the Southern Spirit," a dented sign said, welcoming us to Holmes County. Whatever that was, I hoped it wasn't contagious. We reached where I'd be staying for the next few days, a farmhouse that could easily fit a family of 5. Uncle Davin's backyard opened up to a large field with tall trees lining the borders. In the distance was the decaying corpse of an abandoned barn. The closest neighbors were miles away, between vast cotton fields and cypress swamps. If anyone ever asked my uncle why he chose the backwoods of Mississippi, he'd merely shrug and say,
"We were sick of all the noise, I guess."
Ironic, considering the obscene number of mockingbirds surrounding his property. You couldn't take 2 steps out of his front door before hearing them whistle at you from the tree line. Even at night, the lonely males sang. I'm sure my uncle did need help with the refurbishment, but more than likely, he just wanted some company. Aunt Rosie, his wife, had passed away due to heart conditions not long ago. They'd moved there together some time ago, to the land of flat glades and blues music, only for one to be left behind, all alone. I'd met Aunt Rosie a handful of times, and each visit she'd be nothing but kind and generous. It was unfortunate we'd been unable to make it to the funeral due to my father's poor planning with flight tickets and mixing up the dates. Despite that, Uncle Davin had no bad feelings towards his brother. By nightfall, I'd finished unpacking in the guest room and waited for the forlorn songs to put me to sleep. The next morning, we got up early, ate breakfast, and made our way to the job. We spent the whole afternoon clearing rooms, tearing out carpets, and sanding down hardwood floors. By the end of the day, we'd managed to finish a few rooms and get started on the bathroom tiles. I was exhausted. On the long stretch of road back to my uncle's house, he gave me a hefty pat on the shoulder.
"Thanks for the help, pal. And just for coming by in general."
No problem. I yawned. He averted his gaze back to the road and started to whistle the tune, Home on the Range.
"That was her favorite song, you know,"
he said.
"The same one she'd always sing after church. Of course, the little beak bastards learned it. So I can still hear it in the driveway."
A hard sigh blew out of his nose.
It's hard being honest with yourself, isn't it?
What do you mean?
I mean, having to accept that things change, no matter what you do or could have done. It's good to embrace life, to accept the fact that it's both cruel and beautiful.
I watched his neck slightly turn toward the pale orange tint of the sky.
You can thank God you still have eyes that can see the sunset, but it will never look as pretty as it used to.
He then switched on the radio, and we drove the rest of the way in silence. That night, instead of sleeping, I was doodling some sketches on the writing desk in my room. I'm no artist, but it was a nice distraction from Uncle Davin's long, slow snores floating down the hallway. Something then grazed my nose, a lingering fragrance of floral and citrus, perfume. I looked around the room and spotted movement at my door. A small, dancing orb. Its center seemed to wink when it got my attention. The lamp on my desk flickered slightly. But I wasn't in pain. In fact, I felt fine. An icy worry crept down my neck. Was I in pain somewhere and hadn't even noticed? The orb lazily approached me and then hastened back to the doorway. I'd never seen one move like that before. Curious, I moved toward it and watched it as it made its way toward the stairs and stopped, waiting. It wanted me to follow it. Another realization sparked inside of me. This was Aunt Rosie's perfume. I trailed down the steps after the orb and watched as it sank through the door to the backyard. Grabbing my jacket and my shoes, I stepped into the cold of outside. Sharp air brushed my cheeks. Cicadas made song sounds from the underbrush, underscoring the mockingbird's whistles. The orb was in the field, blinking like a distant lantern. When I finally reached it, the thing dropped and sank into a dead patch of grass. Then the birds started to scream. A whiteness swelled out of the ground. It lit the surrounding turf, still inflating like an oversized balloon about to burst. I raised a hand to shield my eyes from the intense glow. It was huge, a large round tumor of vibrating, pulsing light. And inside the white plastered center of its haze were black, twisting shapes, vague, shadowy objects forming like blots of ink on a canvas. "What do you see?" Rorschach asks. Hands, fingers, all forming out of the white, milky haze, clawing at its insides. Tormented, wailing faces were pushing outward against the orb's stretching yet unyielding inner walls. Their silhouetted mouths stretched open in soundless agony. The brightness shot pain into my left pupil, but I didn't dare look away. I felt dizzy, like I needed to grab onto something, to clasp a little bit of reality back into my hands. But there was nothing. Just me, the field, and the orb full of terrible, writhing things. A playground of pure hysteria. Then, out of the squirming void formed a woman's face. Aunt Rosie's face. Her features as clear as day. Her eyes held the desperate look of someone helpless. Her skin was pasty and loose like melting wax. Her hair was tangled and clumped with dark clots of mud. I watched her colorless lips open and close, speaking, but no words reached me. My legs trembled and I staggered back. I felt like someone on stilts, about to snap their neck along the pavement. I was going to faint. Before the dizziness overtook, I craned my neck toward the house. The lamp in my room was flickering rapidly. Then, nothing. I'm not sure how long I was out, but when I came to, the orb and my aunt's face were gone. Needless to say, sleep was a non-existent thing that night. Every so often, I'd once more peer out the window, wondering if I'd see that glow in the field again. When morning finally came, it didn't take long for my uncle to notice how exhausted I was.
"You all right, pal?"
He asked as I dozed off in the passenger seat. Yeah, I didn't get much sleep. I'm all right." I wasn't, not by a long shot. A part of me wanted to tell him the truth, that hours ago, his deceased wife had somehow made contact with me, that she looked distressed, like she needed help. But what would that do for him? He'd been through enough as it was. No, I needed to ruminate on it some more. Another hard day's work, and we completed a good portion of the house. To celebrate, we went out to eat and watched some late-night stand-up. 2.5 hours after that, I was sitting at the desk, still eyeing the field. I wasn't sure what to expect, or even how to digest the information I had already. Then, sure as hell, just as I started to feel that pinprick of ease, the small orb floated by, its delicate light blinking at me, perfume wafted in my face. Still, there was no pain. I swallowed hard. "Aunt Rosie, is that you?" No response, just more drifting. I tried again. "If that's you, make a sound. Move to the hallway. Give me a sign or something." As I said that, the lamp on my writing desk flickered. "Can you do that again?" I asked. The light spasmed once more. "I need to know if you need help." As though harnessed to my voice, the lamp started to flash its light again. It stopped, then started again, repeating the same exact pattern twice more. Pulses that were short, long, and distinct. Without thinking, I grabbed a sheet of paper and started to write. It was a jumbled, seemingly random flicker to most, but to me, it was a signal. I should thank my time as a Boy Scout for that. We used to spell out swear words to the neighboring troops with our flashlights. I scribed the sequence the orb was repeating. Help. That was it. We were communicating. "You need to tell me more," I said. "Why do you need help?" The lamp flashed again steadily, adding to the pattern. "Help us." I twisted my head toward the orb, which was now circling the room like an intoxicated sprite. She was calling to me, pleading for help, but it was not just Aunt Rosie. There were more of them. There was us. Before I even asked another question, the message shifted. Killed. I felt a sharp pang of anxiousness. Why that word? Why that awful, awful word? A cold, jagged word that punched into me like cold metal. My heart lurched painfully as if pumping excess fluid from my chest, trying to save itself from drowning. I didn't want to ask the next question. I didn't want the answer. Who killed you? Husband. No, 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 no. I crossed the word out, as though that held even an ounce of power. That wasn't possible. My uncle was a saint, the most selfless man I knew. He cared for people. He gave sermons at church. He'd never hurt anyone, let alone the love of his life. My brain rejected the notion. It was wrong. It had to be. The light blinked out another sequence, pausing because the bulb was starting to go out. Just as its last speck of life shorted out, I got the final message. Basement. When I checked back on the orb, it was also gone. Fizzled. Gathering my thoughts, I quietly made my way to the basement door. The stairs shuddered under me. It had to have been 4, maybe 5 in the morning. I didn't know and didn't care. Sleep was the last thing on my overloaded brain. The basement was cold and spacious, with concrete walls, gray cabinets, and a workbench against the wall. Beyond that was just a small square window to the backyard. I paced the room, unsure of what I was even looking for. On the right side of the room was a door propped inches open. I pulled it open the rest of the way to reveal a small closet with a chair in the center. The chair had thick leather straps made for wrists and ankles. The legs were firmly nailed into the ground. It looked like something made for a hysterical patient in a psych ward. The wooden arms were perforated with deep grooves where fingernails had scratched into them. Surrounding the chair in the closet was a rough circle of salt, lined with rows of now melted candles. I had to step back and remind myself to breathe. The thought of being strapped down in that small vertical space gave me a choking, suffocating feeling. I went back to my bedroom, where sleep would never find its way back to me. Before I knew it, my uncle and I were making the final trip to get the remaining rooms refurbished. Throughout the day, there was an evident awkwardness between us. The chair was a constant overtone in my thoughts. I was thinking of 1,000 ways to bring it up to him. It felt like a dangerous question, like one I should save for after I was gone, one for over the phone, but even then, what would that do? During the drive back to his house, I couldn't hold it all in anymore. I had to say something. Uncle Davin? He tilted his neck toward me. I'm sorry to ask this, but it's been eating at me for a while now. How did Aunt Rosie die, exactly? Something stirred in his eyes, a subtle fleck of surprise that quickly slunk back to the corner it was hiding in.
Sorry. I wasn't expecting a question like that. She had heart problems. Didn't I tell you and your folks already?
No, not me. I lied. You probably mentioned it to my parents, though.
Ah, yeah. You're probably right. What has you so curious?
He gave me a quizzical look. Just the chair in your basement, my thoughts pestered. Yes, just the chair with the leather straps and nailed legs. Who was that for? No reason. I shrugged. Just a bad dream I had last night. The conversation dwindled after that and didn't spark again for the rest of the evening. I was sitting at the writing desk, chewing my nails down to ragged stubs. The bulb I had replaced had not yet blinked or fluttered. My flight was tomorrow, and I couldn't tell if I was dreading it or yearning for it. I rang my dad's phone, to no avail, and my mom's was going straight to her voicemail. I just wanted to talk, to hear another voice in my head other than my own. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," I said. My uncle lightly pushed the door open, a glass of dark whiskey in his hand.
Hey, pal.
He sighed.
It's your last night up here. Did you want to watch a movie with me?
No thanks, I'm pretty tired actually. His face gave a faint, troubled look.
What's going on between us? I feel like you're upset.
No, I'm not. Sorry. I just have a lot on my mind right now.
You were in the basement, weren't you?
A lump of panic formed in my throat. What? He sighed heavily and stepped toward the bed. practically stumbling into it for a hunched seat. I realized then how drunk he already was.
That's why you ask, huh?
He muttered.
Because you were, worried?
I wasn't sure what to say. This wasn't Uncle Davin sitting across from me, but a cheap carbon copy of him that drank itself silly and hid secrets from people.
I'll share something with you.
He said dryly.
Something I haven't shared with the rest of the family. To be, honest, I've been rather self-conscious about it.
His eyes wilted toward the whiskey between his hands.
I used to be an exorcist. You know what that is, right?
I nodded my head.
Good boy. I figured you would.
He chuckled nervously.
I understand if subjects like that are fairy dust to you, but if you'd seen what I have, maybe you'd get it. People harming themselves, screaming at me with voices that didn't belong to them, eyes rolling back in their sockets, foam spewing out of their mouths. People came to me for help. Yeah, they came to me, and I helped them.
He repeated sullenly.
I helped all of them.
What does that have to do with Aunt Rosie? He twirled the glass in his hand, spilling some liquor on the floor.
This house never liked me, hated me from the start. Something was wrong with it. Something was here first, in the basement. Rosie found it, and it got to her, made her act strange.
He choked out the end of the sentence, pausing to wipe a tear from his cheek.
She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to hurt herself. I had to do it. I had to get it out of her. And I did. But her heart...
His body lurched into his lap.
It was already so weak. She couldn't make it. I can't go back down there. I can't. That's why you've been helping me renovate the new house. Because I can't be here anymore. It's too much for me.
The rest of the words drained into incoherent sobs.
I'm sorry, pal. I'm sorry.
I helped him off the bed and led him down the hall to his room. His breath reeked of disgusting alcohol.
Tried. Couldn't get rid of it.
He mumbled as I got him to bed.
Had to bury it.
The door clicked shut behind me. I couldn't take it anymore. It was too much to break down. My legs brought me to the garage. Enough was enough. My uncertainty, every last bit of it, had graduated into a searing clarity. Find the truth. I trudged through the backyard, shovel in hand. The cold air couldn't reach me. The mockingbirds were whistling and singing from the tree line. I marched onto the dead patch of grass in the field and started digging. The birds shrilled in a choir of high-pitched whistles. "Shut up!" I barked at them, pushing the round-pointed blade deeper into the earth. Then, I heard the subtle scrape of it hitting something. I dropped to my knees and raked the wet dirt aside. It looked like a wine box, absolutely caked in a red, waxy substance. Things clattered around inside of it. This was it, the truth. I cracked open the seal and peered within. There were old pennies, a lock of black, brown hair bound with a cord, and a single candle holder. Then, light. A wave of light erupted out of the box. It washed over my wrists, slipping inside my sleeves like burning ice. It crawled up my arms, gushing out of the box like blood from an artery. The light swelled and expanded, converging over me in the roundish shape of a large sphere. My body went numb. The world melted into vague, swirling images. I could still hear the cry of the mockingbirds converge into a piercing, rhythmless pitch, louder and louder. It slid into my ears, blotting out all senses and understanding, drowning me inside out. I couldn't breathe anymore. I couldn't taste the cold air. My feet no longer felt the ground under me. I was falling down a deep, airless shaft. No more light, just an endless, hungry darkness. The muscles in my arm tensed painfully. A voice that wasn't mine started to scream. When I came back, I was standing in a dark room. The screaming had stopped. My heart was pounding my ribs like a caged animal. I was sticky with sweat. Whatever I was holding suddenly clattered onto the floor. A kitchen knife, wet with blood. Dread swallowed my thoughts. My eyes traced the room, my uncle's room, and settled on the bed, where a bundle sat stationary beneath the covers. A body. The sheets were doused in red and torn greatly with newly opened slits. My trembling hands were coated in it. Help! My ruptured mind managed to pull together. We need to get help! I twisted toward the door and stopped. A slew of blood smeared over the wall in crude, wet letters read, "Thank you." I called the police, but my uncle was long dead before they arrived. I was taken in and arrested, since I was the only one in the house, the only one with the murder weapon. My prints were all over the crime scene. I'll be going to court for manslaughter charges pretty soon. According to my appointed lawyer, our best bet in the system is an insanity plea. Whatever had been inside that box had taken my body for a ride and stabbed Uncle Davin 20 times. I'll never forgive myself for letting that happen. Thank you, it had told me after I let it out. I'm sorry, Uncle Davin. I'm so sorry for what I've done to you and for whatever hell I've released into the world. Forgive me. Please, forgive me. I reclined in my chair, enjoying the hot sun on my face. The waves before me crashed with rhythmic purpose, and I felt myself growing sleepy. Seagulls cawed overhead. The air smelled of salt and suntan lotion. Things were good. I sat up, rubbing my eyes in the afternoon heat, and dug my toes into the sand. I watched as a father helped his little boy build a sandcastle, and I smiled. What a good dad. I took my sunglasses off my head and slid them onto my face, standing and stretching. I loved the beach. It was impossible to be worried about anything here. I had come here for the weekend, my little oceanfront cottage standing timidly behind me. I had purchased it a year ago, my recent business ventures allowing me some of life's finer luxuries. If only I had someone to share it with. Perhaps later in the evening I'd chance a trip to the local bars and see if I could round up some company. Not that I minded the isolation. After all, it was hard to feel lonely when surrounded by such beauty. I rubbed the back of my neck. My fingers came away coated in sweat. I tossed my sunglasses onto the beach chair and slowly walked towards the water's edge. Frothing residue lapped at my feet, followed by the dying reach of a small wave. I laughed. It felt amazing. Smiling, I charged the rolling mass of sparkling ocean. As the water splashed around my waist, I took a deep breath and dove under. I came up gasping, wiping my eyes, skin glistening in the sunlight. I waved to a group of girls who were body surfing to my left and dove under again. The green water peaked and sloshed around me as I swam further out, enjoying the exercise. I felt the sleepiness drain from my body as my muscles heated. I flipped over onto my back and continued to stroke out to sea, closing my eyes against the brilliance of the burning sun. Eventually, I slowed my backstroke and floated on the surface, letting the tide rock me in its arms. My ears filled and emptied with water, and I listened to both worlds, the one above and the one below. The ocean had always filled me with a sense of wonderment. We were one, but separate, two sides of the same coin. After some time, I lifted my head from the water and shook clinging diamonds out of my hair. I blinked against the salt stinging my eyes and realized that I was a lot further out than I thought. The shore was a deceptive stretch of cool brown sand that remained an uncomfortable distance away. I realized I couldn't touch the bottom. I dove under, trying to gauge how deep the water was, and when I surfaced, I felt my heart begin to race. I was entirely too far out. I forced myself to remain calm and started to swim towards shore. There weren't many people in the water, and I didn't think anyone could even see me out here. I focused on my strokes, keeping my head down and my arms moving. I could feel my muscles begin to burn, and I chanced to look towards shore. It appeared as if it hadn't moved at all. Swallowing hard, I dove underwater and began to pull myself through the swirling green. I kicked my legs out and jetted myself towards land as effectively as I could muster. When my lungs began to ache, I reached for the surface and came up spurting. Again, it appeared as if I hadn't swam at all, and that's when I felt the pull around my legs. I was in a riptide, a nasty one. My body felt drained, and the beach looked impossibly far away still. A nest of worms wriggled in my stomach, and my breathing became frantic. I tried to fight off the panic, but it was like trying to stop an avalanche. I frantically tried to recall what I was supposed to do in a situation like this. I didn't want to scream for help for fear of tiring myself out to the point of exhaustion. Weren't you supposed to swim parallel to the shore or something? Taking a deep breath, I dove to my left. With each stroke, I felt my body get heavier. Soon, my arms felt like slabs of stone and my legs like cement anchors. And then I went under. Terror worked against me, filling my limbs with fire. I tried to pull myself to the surface, but only managed a mouthful of salty ocean. I gagged and spun underwater, my lungs pounding against my chest, my heart beat a desperate cry in my ears. I managed to find surface again, but it drained what little adrenaline I still had. I sucked down one gasp of air before I went under. My limbs were useless, completely spent. Soon my head began to ache from a lack of oxygen, and I snapped my eyes open in horror, searching for the surface. A dark green haze filled my vision, terribly claustrophobic. It pressed in around me, and I felt the riptide pull me back into its merciless jaws. Darkness began to fill my vision. My chest howled for air, but the water held me with wet chains. I felt myself begin to fade, pulled apart in agony. My body sank deeper and deeper, and my hazy eyes searched hopelessly for a savior. Just as the black rushed in on me, I noticed something beneath me. It was a mass of sparkling color, like a cloud filled with neon electricity. It stretched out below me like a storm, flashing and winking like it was the broken remains of some natural phenomenon. Right as my feet were about to enter the mass, I passed out. Something cold on my face, moving darkness, a voice. I focused on the voice, pulling my subconscious towards it with all my willpower. The black began to fade. Light, color. The world swam in an explosion of blurry motion, and then I blinked. I sat up, gasping, eyes popping open. Sweat poured from my face, and I scrubbed it from my eyes. Where was I? What happened? I looked around and saw I was in some kind of hut.
Hey, take it easy. It's okay.
I spun around towards the voice behind me. My heart clawed up my throat, and I stumbled off the cot I'd been resting on, horror ripping across my mind. A naked man sat before me, but he was mutated. The skin beneath his eyes dropped down his cheeks, exposing angry red muscle that oozed with clear slime. His nose hung from his face, dangling like the trunk of an elephant. He was bald, and the top of his head was slit open. I watched in terrified disgust as a second tongue extended from the opening and licked moisture across his scalp. Drool dripped down around his ears in thick trails. What the fuck? What's going on? Where am I? I screamed, backing myself into a corner, wood and straw poking at me from the wall. The man stood up, his nose swaying like a piece of melted taffy.
It's all right. It's okay. You're safe. You've made it. You're here.
I stared up at him with wide eyes. What are you? Where am I? The man put aside a wet cloth he had been using to wipe my face. He held up his hands and approached me, squatting before me, a smile on his face.
I am Lovell. I was the one that found you on the beach. I'm so happy you're here. We've been praying for this moment for...
His eyes rolled in wonderment.
Oh, we've prayed for so long.
I held up my hands, stopping him, grimacing as the second tongue slurped across his head. The drool leaked down into his face and dripped slowly across his exposed muscle beneath his eyes. You need to tell me what's going on, I said, trying to collect myself. The last thing I remember was drowning. I got caught in a riptide and something weird in the water. The man, Lovell, smiled.
I can't even imagine what you're going through right now. But the important thing is that you are here. You've passed through the red cloud. You've done what none have done before. It's not much, a mere pinprick in its mass. But you can show us how to do it. You can show us how to get through.
I was shaking my head slowly, mouth open. Stop. Wait. Please, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know anything about this. I was just taking a swim in the ocean and got pulled under by a riptide. My mind was spinning with confusion. What the hell was this person talking about? Red cloud, tearing a hole through it? I wasn't following, and the constant twist of unease in my gut wasn't helping. Lovell nodded understandingly.
It's only natural you're a little scrambled. I can't fathom what the red cloud did to you as you passed. The suffering you must have endured. It really is a testament to who you are, what you've come here to do.
I licked my lips, head aching as I tried to comprehend what was going on, who I am. To my horror, Lovell reached out and stroked my face.
Why, you're an angel, come to save us. You're here to show us the way to heaven. You've broken the barrier, passed through the red cloud, and now you will lead us back with you.
I blinked, confusion blasting through my mind like a cannonball. I tried to sort my thoughts, tried to piece together what had happened to me. Everything felt wrong. Everything felt different. My head ached and I clutched my temples, trying to focus. I had been swimming, then the riptide, sinking down into that darkness, sinking down into that strange cloud of light. Had that been real, or had that been something I imagined? My dying mind conjuring up some strange hallucination? Suddenly, Lovell reached out a hand.
Come, the others will want to meet you. You're going to be their savior, after all.
I let him pull me to my feet. I couldn't make sense of any of this. What was happening to me? Awareness settled in around me as I stood, and I realized we were in a windowless hut made of straw and wood. The sand beneath my feet rose to swallow my ankles, and I deducted we must still be on the beach. But what beach? And who was this disgusting man before me? Who were the others? What did they expect of me?
I can see you're having a hard time remembering. Come, let us go outside. Maybe once you see, it will help rattle your memory.
Bewildered and uneasy, I let him lead me through the door. Sunlight erupted across my vision and I winced, shading my eyes with my hand. I squinted, letting the world settle. I froze. Lovell stopped before me and turned, his second tongue rolling across his bald head. He smiled.
Behold your flock,
he said, spreading his arms. I was standing on a sand dune above a beach filled with people who looked just like Lovell. They were all looking at me with awe in their eyes, 1,000 naked bodies, all with drooping noses and slits in their heads. Tongues rolled in and out of their skulls, creating a constant squirting sound that echoed across the expanse of sand. Slowly, they all got down on their knees and bowed their heads in silence. What the hell is going on? I muttered in shock, eyes growing wide, heart thundering in my chest. And that's when I saw something in the sky, past the congregation, hanging over the ocean. It was a long black chain that extended from the heavens, 200 or 300 feet from shore. At the end of the chain was the motionless, charred body of a man, but he was huge. at least 9 or 10 feet tall. The chain was wrapped around his neck, and his dark, crusted head rested on his shoulders in complete stillness. My eyes traced the chain up the length of the sky, and it disappeared through the clouds. "Where am I?" I whispered, my stomach squirming as new fear surged in my gut. Lovell stepped towards me.
You're here, with us. Don't you remember? We've prayed for you to come, begged God to send an angel to lead us to him. And now, you have. You've emerged from the red cloud, broken through its dark walls, and come to lead us to heaven.
"No," I whispered. "No, that's not true. I don't know anything about this place. I'm not an angel. I'm just a person." Lovell pointed at my face.
You're wrong. Don't you know how beautiful you look? Your skin, your eyes, your hair.
He placed his hand over his naked chest.
When I found you on the beach, I almost fainted. You're the most beautiful angel we could have dreamed for. You're perfect.
I swallowed hard, backing up. "Stop talking like that. I'm not an angel. I'm just a normal fucking person." Lovell frowned.
Please, don't speak like that. You've just been affected by the red cloud. It will fade. You will remember who you are.
I pointed towards the massive, charred man in the sky. "If I'm an angel, then who is that?" Lovell turned, and I could see him visibly tense.
That's the Hanged Man. He is what you've come to deliver us from.
I shook my head. "What is he?"
He watches over the red cloud beneath the water. He is our warden, our oppressor. He is our gatekeeper. If anyone tries to break through, he will stop them.
Lovell looked at me, and his sagging eyes grew dark.
He is the shadow of God, the darkness that grew behind the light of the Lord. He is evil incarnate.
This was all too much. I couldn't digest it, couldn't wrap my mind around this bizarre ataxia. I just wanted to get out of here, get away from this nightmare and go back to my beach house. The strange mass of people kneeling before me, the red cloud, the hanged man. I could feel madness approaching, all constructs of reason and understanding crumbling before me. "Please," I croaked. "Please, I just want to go home. I don't belong here. This isn't right. Please." Suddenly, I saw hardness enter Lovell's eyes.
You need to stop talking like that. You came here to save us. You came here to lead us through the red cloud to heaven. You're going to take us back with you. We've waited and prayed for this day for an eternity. You can't turn your back on us. You're the only one who's managed to make it through, to make it past the hanged man. You have to show us the way.
"No!" I cried, suddenly overcome with a wave of dizziness. "No, I'm not the one you've been praying for. Please!" I put my hand to my head, the heat from the sun splitting my mind in two. I blinked and began to see patches of darkness. I stumbled backwards, blinking sluggishly. "I'm not your angel." I blacked out. I awoke in a rush of heat. My face felt damp and my mind swirled between worlds. My eyes snapped open and I immediately sat up. Sweat dripped off my nose and my throat was dry and parched. I pulled a hand across my eyes and blinked. Lovell was sitting beside me, his long nose hanging from his face like an infected skin tag, his second tongue slowly coating his scalp with saliva. As I raised my eyes, I saw there were others in the hut. They stood by the door, watching me, their eyes oozing clear slime that dripped down their drooping cheeks.
Hot today, isn't it?
Lovell said from his place by my cot.
Are you feeling okay? You fainted on us.
I shifted on my bedding and warily eyed my guests by the door. They seemed to be in awe. My stomach turned as I watched drool leak down their skin across their naked bodies. The tongues squirming from their heads looked like bloated worms, and I tasted bile on my tongue.
They want to hear you speak.
Lovell said quietly, placing a hand on my thigh.
They want to know what to do.
I jerked away from his touch and shook my head. I told you, I'm not an angel. I don't know what this place is or how I got here. I can't help you. I'm sorry. As I spoke, Lovell's eyes grew hard. He reached out and grasped my thigh again, his grip now firm and commanding. He spoke with cold authority.
It's time you fulfilled your duty. We don't want to hear any more excuses. Show us how to get past the hanged man. Show us how to get to heaven.
He stood and motioned for me to do the same.
Come, let's go outside.
I rose with him, not sure what else to do. We walked towards the door, and the others stepped aside to let us pass, bowing their heads slightly. No matter what I said, it seemed they were stuck on the idea that I was some kind of angel. We went outside, and I stopped dead in my tracks. The congregation was lying down on the beach, hands at their sides, like rows and rows of forgotten corpses. When they saw me emerge from the hut, they stirred to life, crawling to their knees where they remained, hands on their naked thighs. They were waiting. Behind them, over the water, the hanged man remained motionless, his body static at the end of the long chain.
Come, you must speak to them.
Lovell said at my side, placing a hand on my shoulder. No, I whispered, feeling uneasy. No, you don't understand. I can't help you people. Lovell's grip turned to iron, pushing me forward towards the dunes.
Come, it's time you showed us the way.
I stumbled forward, my bare feet burning in the sand. The sun blazed down from a cloudless sky, and I saw thousands of eyes follow me as I walked along the dunes. Hopeful, desperate eyes. I watched them below me, the beach alive with movement as their tongues slithered across their bald heads, cooling them from the sun's burning light. I looked past them towards the hanged man, squinting to catch any sign of movement. He remained immobile, his huge, charred body dangling helplessly from the chain. His eyes remained shut and his chest still. As far as I could tell, he was dead. Maybe there was something to that. Maybe that was the answer to my problem. These people, how long had it been since they attempted to pass through this red cloud? How long had it been since this hanged man had last stirred? I continued to be led across the dunes, sweat pouring from my face. I felt like I was suffocating, my throat a dry strip of sandpaper. It was impossibly hot. I could feel my skin cooking beneath the intense light, and I ran my tongue along my cracked lips. What did Lovell expect me to say to these people? As the burning sand danced between my toes, I was struck with a thought. When am I going to wake up? I almost laughed, but the sudden humor died in my dehydrated mouth. I looked behind me at Lovell and the little party following us. They looked excited. They looked hopeful. It made me sick. I had no plan, no idea what was happening to me. I had grown an army of followers who thought I was some kind of savior. I was trapped in a nightmare and I didn't see any way out. One moment I'd been drowning, and the next I was standing before a congregation who expected some kind of sermon from me. They expected me to reveal the path to salvation. What could I say that would make them understand? What could I do to show them I wasn't an angel?
This is good,
Lovell said suddenly, squeezing my shoulder. We were standing at the peak of a large dune, a platform to spread my voice to the waiting subjects below. I felt my stomach shudder as I looked out on the thousands of people on their knees looking up at me and the ever-present hanged man, dead and silent over the ocean. I shot a look over my shoulder at Lovell, swallowing hard. What do you want me to say? I gasped. Lovell spread his hands.
Anything you want. Tell us how you got here. Tell us how to follow you back to heaven. Tell us how to get by the hanged man.
My back was slick with sweat, and I wiped a coat of it off my forehead. Turning back to the audience below me, My heart was thundering in my chest, and my breath blew sour across my tongue. What should I say? How would I get them to understand? Questions rolled across my mind to the point of madness. I fumbled for words to say, but they died on my tongue. I could feel myself growing scared and then frustrated. What the hell did they want from me? Fuck, this is insanity. I cleared my throat. I'm not your angel, I yelled, my voice carrying down to them. I don't know how I got here, but I can assure you that it wasn't because of your prayers. I heard Lovell and the others behind me audibly gasp. I continued. I don't know where I am or who you freaks are, but I'm not your savior. I got caught in a riptide and sank into a cloudy light in the ocean. I thought I was dead. Maybe I am dead. I heard Lovell growl something from behind me, but I ignored it. I don't know how to save you. I don't know how to get to heaven. I'm not the one you've been waiting for. I pointed across the ocean. And that thing, your almighty hanged man, he looks dead. And here you are, cowering on the beach, trembling in fear. You want to make something of yourselves? You want to transcend to a better life? Well, stop being such fucking cowards and do it. I was shaking, my fists clenched by my sides, sweat dripping from the tip of my nose. I was angry. A sudden surge brought on by the sand and heat, the continuous insistence that I was some angel sent here to deliver them. Lovell reached out to grab me, but I shook him off, pointing towards the water. Stop waiting for a miracle and fucking do it yourselves! I'm not your goddamn angel! I was suddenly pulled down by strong hands and I fell to the ground. Sand was kicked into my face as a chorus of angry voices loomed over me. My arms were pinned to the ground and I lashed out, furious and scared, losing myself in the waking nightmare. A foot plowed into my stomach and my will to fight left me along with most of my breath. I lay, gasping, blinking against the sun. A shadow fell over my face and Lovell stared down at me with fire in his eyes.
What have you done?
I can't help you fucking freaks! I spat, wriggling against my captors. It didn't do much good. Lovell shook his head at me and then stared into the eyes of the others. They nodded to him, a silent conversation passing through the air above me. Get off me! I growled. Let me go! Lovell leaned down and placed his lips to my ear.
If you won't help us, then we'll find another use for you.
I stopped struggling and turned to look into his eyes. What the hell are you talking about? Lovell licked his lips.
If you won't show us mercy, perhaps the hanged man will. Perhaps an offering will change his mind. Perhaps an angel is the price we must pay to cross to the other side.
Let go of me! I roared, chest heaving. You're all insane! You don't know what you're talking about! Lovell raised a hand to the others.
Get the boat. It's time we float to eternity, my brothers.
A cry of joy went up, followed by an even louder exclamation from below us on the beach. I cocked my head in the sand and saw the mass of people standing, smiles on their faces. They pumped their fists into the air and began to chant. My blood went cold as I listened. Sacrifice. Before I could speak, I was roughly hauled to my feet, hands slapping and gripping me. I was pushed down the dune, a hard shove in the middle of my back. I went sprawling, hitting the slope face first. I coughed and spat as millions of burning shards scraped across my cheeks as I tumbled, rolling over myself to slide to a stop on the beach. Immediately, the mass was on me. A hand tangled in my hair and pulled me to my feet while others grabbed me and began to drag me to the water's edge. I screamed and fought, panic rising in my throat like a burning volcano. I looked over my shoulder and saw Lovell striding towards me down the dune, a sick smile on his face. I was filled with terror at how quickly they had turned on me. The more I struggled, the rougher the crowd became. Fists pummeled my body, nails raked across my skin, blood and slime spattering my face. I coughed and wheezed, blinking through it all, my vision filling with thousands of wriggling, moving bodies. Flesh pressed against me and my ears filled with the roar of a growing riot. My feet tripped and stumbled against the onslaught and I finally fell. I felt a rope slide around my neck. Pain ignited around my throat, a circle of sudden fire as they began to drag me towards the ocean. Blinking through blood, I trained my eyes ahead of me towards the sky, and my heart stopped in my chest. The hanged man's eyes were wide open, and he was looking right at me. Fear coursed through me with the force of a raging hurricane, and I began to scream in absolute horror. The hanged man's eyes were huge and swollen, his irises two red orbs in a pool of blinding snow. Color shot from his sockets like searchlights, twin red funnels that filled my vision and summoned my darkest nightmares. I tried to scream, but my cries were severed by a jerk on the rope. The earth beneath me thundered with a stampede of feet and a hurried rush to the water's edge. I retched and felt my eyes bulge, my mind dimming from the lack of oxygen. Mercifully, the rope was removed and I was dragged to my feet. The world swam as I tried to focus on the bouncing, swirling ocean of people before me. Their long noses swayed on their faces like pendulums, and their second tongues coated their scalps excitedly. I heard a great cry rise to my left, and I weakly turned my head. They were pushing a small craft into the water, a flat construction of wood with a single mast that unfolded to reveal a great sail. My arms were pulled behind my back, and I felt my hands bound. I gripped my teeth as rope cut into my wrists, and I was yanked towards the boat. I coughed and fought to stay upright, my feet splashing into the ocean. Lovell was climbing onto the craft along with 3 others. He reached down and pulled me up, then tossing me aside like a sack of dead meat. He turned to the mass of people on the beach, raising his voice.
Pray for us. Pray for mercy. Pray for salvation.
A roar went up at our backs as we were pushed out to sea. Water splashed over the crudely constructed frame, and I gagged as the sea salt rushed up my nose. I was pulled into a sitting position and shoved against the mast. My bangs dripped into my eyes as I looked out into the sky. The hanged man had raised his head from his shoulders and was watching us approach. The red light that shot from his eyes blinded me, and I turned away, spots dancing across my vision. Horror and fear filled me, and my battered, shaken body offered no comfort.
It didn't have to be like this,
Lovell said behind me as he dug an oar into the ocean. The other 3 followed his example, their dripping faces watching me. Fuck you! You've all lost your minds! The water sloshed across the wooden planks as we continued to draw closer and closer to the hanged man, his massive body dangling from its heavenly chain like bait on a hook. He was waiting for us, hovering above the surface of the sea, his eyes never leaving us. As we approached, Lovell raised his hand to the others and they stopped rowing. The craft slowed and I chanced a glance up, feeling a dark stirring in the back of my mind, like something was poking around from inside my head. The hanged man loomed over us, suspended a dozen feet above the calm waters. The craft was consumed in red light. I felt fear and terror boil in my brain as I fought to control a sudden surge of haunting images that flashed before me like morbid photographs. Lovell got down on his knees, followed by the others. His voice shook as he spoke.
Please, we come in peace. Spare us a moment and listen to what I have to say.
The hanged man remained a statue of dark fear. Lovell continued, visibly shaken.
In exchange for passage into heaven, we offer you this angel who has come to us promising salvation.
I whipped my head to stare at him. Lovell shot me a look and pressed on.
He has offered to rid us of your presence, but we knew there would be no passage unless you deemed us worthy. So instead of following this angel in a revolution against you, we offer him up to you as a token of goodwill, as a token of respect, as a rite of passage. Please, take him as payment and let us pass through the red cloud into heaven.
He bowed his head and spread his arms, waiting. You fucking liar! I snarled.
Silence!
Lovell hissed, the air filled with mounting tension as seconds ticked by. The sound of the water sloshing around the boat seemed to consume me. I shut my eyes and focused on it, shaking, trembling, feeling the red light wash over my skin. Suddenly, I heard a collective gasp and I snapped my eyes open. There, in the water below us, was a massive, voluminous cloud of sparkling red light. It extended out into the ocean like a titanic patch of fog, a swirling dance of color that churned beneath the surface. Lovell stood, eyes wide.
He is allowing us passage.
The others stood, staring at one another, mouths open in complete shock. Immediately they sank back to their knees, heads bowed, and began to sputter thanks and praise to the hanged man. They prostrated themselves on the boat, gushing with wonderment and promise. Suddenly, Lovell grabbed me and pulled me to my feet. "I hope you rot in hell," I growled as he pulled me over to the mast.
Quite the contrary,
He said, yanking on me. He motioned for the others to help him, and I suddenly felt the familiar coil of rope around my throat. I coughed and struggled, but was silenced with an oar to the stomach. I vomited.